Hello and welcome everybody. It's Karen. I'm so glad you're here because today I've got this really fun lantern card to share with you. Now it was originally designed by Sarah Treblecock and I will have a link to her video down below. She made hers slightly bigger and I have modified this one. I wanted this one to fit into a 5 by 7 inch envelope, so I've adjusted the measurements a little bit. But you can see how much fun these are. At the back, I've got it decorated. That's a piece of paper from Paper Rose from the Enchanting Christmas collection. And I've got a little candle on the inside. And I just thought these were really, really fun. So you could either use the papers there that I did use, but I think these embossed die cuts would also work really well. Now the card is made from one sheet of 8.5 by 11-inch cardstock, and I used 110-pound cardstock. It should be fairly sturdy. Along the 11-inch side, you want to cut two little strips, half an inch wide each, and then a 5-inch long piece by 3/4 of an inch. And then from what you have left, you will cut a 6-inch by 10.5-inch card base. Now along the 10.5-inch side, we're going to score at every 2.5 inches. So 2.5 inches, 5 inches, 7.5 inches, and again at 10 inches. And then we're going to rotate the cardstock around. Now the 1/2 inch flap will be up at the top, and score here now along the long side at 4.5 inches. And this part to the right of the 4.5 inches will be the top of the lantern. Now along this top edge, you want to mark the halfway point, and so each section is 2.5 inches, so you want to mark 1.25 inches in from each score line. So I just found it easier to line a score line up with a whole number and mark over 1.25 inches. So that's all I'm doing there. I'm just sliding my score lines along till they come to a whole number and then just marking over 1.25 inches. And that's the center now of each of those 2.5 inch wide sections. Now on this little 5-inch piece, we're going to score it at 1.25 inches in from both ends. So I just like to rotate this around so I know where 1.25 inches is. It's the easiest way. Okay, so now on my desktop, I've got my base and a little ball stylus, and I am going to score along my ruler from where those score lines meet to that little penciled point that we just marked. So it's making a triangular line here for the top. So you can see I started at the score line and I went right to that pencil mark. And I just find it easier to go all in one direction because you're going to do this with all 4 sections of this lantern that we've just created with our score lines. So I'm going from the score lines there to the pencil mark on the angle. Now you could do this on a mouse pad. I tried that at first and I pressed too hard and I went through a little bit, so I just prefer to do it on my desk. But if you can do it without going through, that would be great. But it works like this. So I've rotated the paper around and I'm going to go back all along all 4 sections again, making diagonal lines the other direction. So it should look like this. You can see all those triangular peaks there at the top of each section. Now on the bottom, I'm just marking in 1 inch from the end, from the bottom edge, and I'm going to lightly draw a pencil line across those first 3 sections. Now this last section closest to the flap, we are not going to mark because you don't want to cut into that one. That's actually the back of the card. And so you can decorate that. Now I've used these stitched rectangle dies. I used the smallest one. And that pencil line just lets me line up the die. So I'm lining it right up onto the pencil line. And that way it's the height of the windows will stay the same all the way around the lantern. So I'm just centering that die between the score lines, just eyeballing it. And I did that on all 3 of those last sections. And then you can erase your pencil mark. Now if you want to ink blend it or color it in, this is your chance to do it while it's still flat. So I've done that and I'm just misting with some water and blotting that up. And then I used a little white acrylic paint and some water and just added some white spatter to this. I also added the spatter to a piece of acetate. So that's what I've got done here. Now I just did the entire sheet, so it's extra large, but I can make more lanterns out of this. And then I'm just eyeballing here how much I need of it and just cutting with my scissors. This will all be on the inside, so honestly, nobody will notice, apart from you and I, how crooked I went there. But that's all you need is just the height of it. And then I'm cutting this a little bit short because you're only going to put this acetate in between those score lines. So here I'm putting down the double-sided tape on the top and the bottom edge of this piece of acetate. And I like to just burnish it in. And now I'm centering it over those windows, and I'm going to just cut up along the edge of this acetate inside where the score lines are. You really want to make sure that you can fold the score lines over the acetate. So just avoid those score lines. And now I've taken the release paper off and I'm just attaching this to the inside. And you can see I did go very wonky with my cutting, so I'm just trimming that off. Nobody will know. And then I like to burnish it. So now all those windows are covered. Nobody sees that inside part unless they're looking really hard. And now you can fold and burnish all of these vertical score lines on the lantern. So they're all mountain folds. They all get bent in the same direction, just kind of creating that box shape. And now if you want to decorate the inside back, now is the chance to do it. So I've chosen this paper with the poinsettias and just try to center one poinsettia inside the back edge there. You want to make sure that the piece of pattern paper you choose is smaller than 2.5 inches. So probably 2.25 inches wide, just to allow those edges to fold over. Now this is the 5-inch little piece that we scored, and I have folded those along the score lines. Both of them are mountain folds. It is going to be the tab that holds the candle. So I'm just putting glue on the one side, on the one tab, and I'm going to line it up underneath the window, pointing towards that back piece. And I'm making sure that I can fold the back piece, that I haven't pressed it too far into that score line. So you can see there it goes right under the window. And now I'm folding back the other tab, and I'm just putting some double-sided adhesive tape on it. And you can put tape along this back flap as well, below that 4.5-inch score line and down to the end. And that's going to be the flap that will hold the box together. So now we're going to cut a little wedge out of that flap. So just below that 4.5-inch score line, I'm just angling my scissors and cutting to the score line. Now this piece here we don't need, so I'm cutting right down along the score line to where that angled line is. And I'm angling off the other end of that flap, so you can see that it's all angled. Now along this score line here, we're going to cut to the next score line. So straight along just to that score line there. And then we'll rotate this and do the same thing on the other side. So along that 4.5-inch score line to the first score line across. And then what you can do is fold this whole top section down and burnish it. It's kind of your last chance to do that. And now along all of these diagonal lines, we are going to fold them one by one to make them into mountain folds. So you're just getting the paper ready to be folded and bent into its lantern shape. The inner ones tend to be a little bit tougher, and you sort of have to fold the whole lantern up and sort of be careful at the bottom of these. You can see it's not the easiest one to do, but they will go. I promise you they'll go. And just burnish them with your fingers. So once you've got them all creased and folded so they know which way they're going to go, we're going to fold across now on that first score line and just hold it together. We're going to trim off this excess. So you don't want all that bulk, and you want things to be able to bend and move. So I'm leaving about 1/4 inch next to the score line, I'd say. Just enough for a piece of double-sided tape to fit, basically. And then we're going to fold along the next score line. So we're folding it at the halfway, and just be careful of that tab there. I have bent mine a few times. So just keep it out of the way so it's not bending in the wrong place. And again, just trim it off, that that triangle piece, trim it so there's 1/4 inch or so past the score lines. And again on the third one, same thing. And then for those 2 end pieces, I just found those easier to do on their own. So just I'm trimming it so there's maybe 1/4 inch left beside the score lines. So you should have something that looks like this right now. Now at each of those points, we want to trim off even more. So I'm just taking my little scissors for this, and I'm just cutting a much sharper angle away from the point, just so there's a lot less bulk there. There's no rhyme or reason to how much. You just want to angle your scissors a little bit, take off some of the excess. You still need enough on the sides that you can attach the tape, so just from the points across. And then you should have something that looks a little bit like this, kind of a funny looking top. So now if you flip that over, what's going to happen is this first outer section is going to rotate up and attach to this next section. But in order to keep the bulk out of the way, I'm going to put a little piece of double-sided adhesive tape on the inside of that second section. And if I remove the release paper, I can fold that flap right down onto that, and that's going to hold everything there. And then I just put a little bit more double-sided adhesive tape on that flap, and I can remove the release paper, and then you'll see we can attach that first section right to it. So you want to line up those score lines and try to get the points lined up at the top, and then just press that together. It's not very hard to do, honestly. And just sort of pinch it, and then I burnished it. And we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. So I'm putting that double-sided adhesive tape on the inside of the second section there, folding that flap down onto the tape, and then we'll put a bit more tape onto that flap. And then just remove that release paper, and we'll attach that first triangular section to that one as well. So just lining up the score lines and the points at the top. So you should end up with this kind of weird looking shape now. And so now exactly the same thing is going to happen on this inside one. You're going to fold one of those in, so we'll put a little more adhesive tape down inside that one flap and fold it down and over. And for this one, you do sort of have to fold up the edges of the lantern a little bit to make it work. And then we'll put some double-sided tape on that. And again, we'll just fold those up, lining everything up. It ends up going flat on the top at this point, so you can get inside and sort of press it down with your bone folder. So that's flat on the bottom. And now for this last one, I've got the double-sided adhesive tape on one of the flaps, and I'm just attaching it to the other one. So that's the whole top section done, and you can burnish that with the bone folder again. Now to attach the flap inside this little tab, we're going to extend it nice and straight with the end open and the tape right side up. Remove the release paper, and you're going to fold this lantern in half. So from the second vertical fold line, and I'm making sure that the bottom edges are nicely lined up. And you just press that down and pick up that adhesive tape, and your tab should be in the right place. And then we'll fold this side flap over and remove that release paper. And then again, you're going to line up the bottom edges, which is kind of what I'm trying to do there with my finger stuck down, but line up the bottom edges and then carefully press that down so the edges should line up with that fold line on the flap, and then just press it in and burnish that. And that's basically the lantern. Now, because it is square on the top, that top edge will not go down. So what you're going to try to do is trim just a little of this double edge off. Now, be careful when you do this. You want some good sharp scissors because you don't want to cut into the lantern at all. So I've just taken a little tiny wedge off that, and it will now fold down and in. Now at the end of this video, I have added in, I don't know if it's a fix or not, but it's what I did to make that lantern, that top part stay down. So stay tuned for that. Now you can see that I've inked up those two long 11-inch straps. And all I've done is I've put some glue on the back of this one, and I'm lining up the bottom edges of it. And as I go around each corner, I'm just pinching it. I didn't score these because then it becomes a little more difficult to line up all the score lines with the folds. But you can do it just by pinching it as you go around each corner. So I'm just making sure that it's lined up and sticking, and then I pinch it. And then when you get back to the beginning, you'll see there's just a little bit of excess strapping that you don't need. So I just cut that off with my scissors. Now on the top section, we're actually going to extend this strapping halfway above. So the halfway mark of the strapping will go along that opening at the top there. So I'm putting glue now onto the lantern base itself, and then I will position the strapping halfway above and halfway below that score line. And all that does is it just helps to disguise some of that opening mechanism of the lantern itself. There is quite an open edge on the one side, and you need that to allow the card to fold down flat. But you can see there it's halfway above that score line and halfway below. So again, I'm just putting glue down, making sure it's sealed, and pinching each corner as I go around, and then trimming the excess off. Now I've cut two small circles from silver mirror cardstock, and I'm going to glue those together so they're both silver on each side. And you can see there, we're only going to attach that tiny little bottom part that is on the front of the lantern. You can only decorate the front part of the lantern, so it's got to be quite small, that piece of tape that we use. So I used red line tape for that because it's quite strong. And I'm going to put the tape only on the front here. So just making sure it's there, and then I can fold it flat and press that right down and just burnish it to make sure it sticks. And then all I did with that is I shaped it a little bit. I sort of pulled the ring forward. I kept it pressed down where it's glued and sort of bent it forward a bit, just so it would stand up nice and straight. Now I've used these, the 3 candle circle die, and I've just cut it from scrap cardstock, and here you can see I'm just cutting around those leaves the way I think the leaves would end. Nobody's really going to see this, so if you make a mess, it's not going to show. It's all going to be tucked inside the card. And then I use Copic markers to color in my candles and the greenery. And this will attach to that tab that we've put. So you're just putting glue on the bottom of those candles, and then I'm reaching in and just positioning them there where I want them in the middle. And then I've used this Christmas Poinsettia Flourish die set. I love this die set. It's so pretty. And again, I've cut it from some silver mirror cardstock. Now I'm making sure here that I do not go past the left side edge of the lantern, because then it won't fit into my envelope. I can go past on the right because of the way the lantern folds down, but I don't want glue on the part that extends past that right edge of the front. So I've only put glue on the left side of this flourish piece, and I'm just pressing it down so you can flatten it to make sure that the glue sticks. And then I colored with Copic markers my poinsettia, and I did add some prills to the center of it, and I've added a little bow to the top, and that's the card pretty much. Now for the back of this one, and also the purple one, just because I inked those up, I've got this little removable tag. It's an Avery tag, and I just stuck that on the back so you have somewhere to write, but they can, whoever gets it can remove that and reuse this lantern if they want. Now I went in after I'd finished all these 3, and I've used this Mary duo layer die set. I used the larger one of the Marys out of that set, cut that from some silver card, And this little Christmas stamp I silver heat embossed, and just cut that out and tuck that in underneath. Now, I kept looking at these and I didn't like that open flap, and I don't know if what I've done is the right answer or not. I hope you guys will give me some suggestions and ideas in the comments if you have some better way of securing these, because what I've done here is just taken a brad and I stuck it through a little opening. So here's how I made the opening. I just tucked that corner onto a mat, and I used my craft knife to just cut a small little slit, and then you can put the brad straight through that. Now, I didn't open up the edges of the brad or anything else. I just wanted something there to hold that lid down when it was opened up. It needs to be, open for mailing. But once the recipient gets it, then they can close it so it stays closed, out on display. So I hope you've enjoyed that, everybody. I'm really appreciative of you for stopping by to see this video. I hope it's given you some inspiration, and I hope you're having a great day.